Hello, how are you doing? Lately, there is an influx of immigrants in Canada. Everybody is talking about Canada, wants to move to Canada. Literally everybody around the globe, they want to move to Canada. I've gotten a lot of questions. People are asking me ways of coming to Canada or moving to Canada. If there is any avenue they could take the opportunity to move to Canada, they're gonna do it. This video is really to answer all those questions for sure because people want to know what is it like living in Canada? How easy is it for somebody to start a new life in Canada? Is everybody in Canada rich? When somebody's not in Canada, they assume that living in Canada means that you have a lot of money, you are rich, which is not the case, at least not for everybody. So I just want to break down all those misconceptions, give you the positives according to my experiences and observations, as well as mention the biases and the negative aspects I have seen so far. So if that excites you, stick around and let's dive right into it. So, first and foremost, there is this wrong assumption about Canada. People assume that because you live in Canada, then you are rich. Or if they move to Canada, they're gonna get rich. I wanna say that is not true. Not everybody in Canada has money or is rich, so to speak. It may not happen as quick as you think and as easy as you may assume. You have to literally start your life from ground zero, and it may take quite some time, a lot of work, dedication, as a matter of fact, sacrifice. Because you may have to work more than you've ever worked before. When you move to Canada, you're gonna realize that the Canadian dollar has a lot of value compared to most countries. A Canadian dollar can stretch more in terms of the other currency back home. However, when you live in Canada, you learn that life is pretty expensive. You might be making quite some good money, but the lifestyle consumes a lot of what you make. Paying the bills, mortgage, things of that nature. At the end of the day, you realize life is pretty expensive, especially living in Canada. In Canada, we pay taxes on literally everything. Everything you buy, you're gonna pay a lot of taxes. When you work, most of the money is taxed. At the end of the day, even your paycheck is literally cut significantly. Your take home is just this much. And then also the other thing that some people do not know about Canada is the fact that there is a lot of homelessness in Canada, which can be quite a shock to some people. Just like so many other countries, there is homelessness everywhere. Every city in Canada, there is a bit of some homelessness. And that is a reality that sometimes some immigrants come with this excited mind, thinking that it's all merry and beautiful in Canada. But in actual sense, that is a reality and it could happen to anybody, literally. I have seen some people who moved here, and before you know it, they are living on the streets. And the other misconception moving to Canada, in Canada, is that when somebody gets there, they're gonna get a job, they're gonna find work right away, and of course, make the big money, right? And get rich and stuff like that. That is a little bit far from reality. As the years have gone by, I have come to learn that actually finding work in Canada is becoming a pretty tough thing for literally any kind of jobs. Most professional careers in Canada, it's not that easy to get your foot into the door. You have all the papers and some good experience. Most times, our qualifications and experiences are not recognized. That has caused a lot of frustration for a lot of immigrants, for people who have really studied accountants, human resources, doctors, name it. When you move to Canada, sometimes you may have to trade, just switch careers and just do anything that can really get you something to put food on the table. It's quite frustrating that most immigrants are choosing to go back home. So some of those are the assumptions that I wanted to help you understand a bit of the reality. And these are things that I have seen and observed, as a matter of fact, experienced some of them. So, how about the good things? When they ask me why I love living in Canada, these are the positive things that I really, really love this country. Canada to me is more safe than anywhere else. Of course, you gotta be careful, you gotta watch your back. However, it is a country that you would barely ever hear any kind of violence. It's in Canada that you can walk any time of the day or night in any place, and it is safe. Like some of us live in just the average, it's not like the billionaire type of neighborhood, but even to the lay person neighborhoods, Canada is safe. You can literally walk out of your house and do not have to close and leave your car never locked. And you will find everything just exactly the way you left it, January to December. To me, safety is the best thing that I love about Canada. To a greater extent, there is a good level of freedom of expression, and that could be any way you want to interpret it. I've been to places where you're quickly shut down by society, culture, norm. They will just shut you down over anything. But in Canada, there is that reception and acceptance of everybody in any way you come. There are no restrictions. What you believe in, and there is nobody who is going to come in and shovel their beliefs into you. So there is that respect, which to me is a good thing as well, because there is not much unnecessary influence among people or society in regard to what you should believe in or how you should express yourself. Everybody's free to express themselves any way they want, believe in what you want. There's that level of respect, and it goes on in a broad sense of mind, which I can't explain in this video in detail, but that is really a beautiful thing about Canada. Canada has this beautiful nature right from your doorstep. There is green landscape everywhere, green parks, it's clean. Literally every little community has a green space, which is clean and beautiful, and you can just go there and relax and just live that nice, calm, beautiful life. I love that about Canada. Honestly speaking, Canada is such a gifted country. Every town, every neighborhood is nicely taken care of. It's so clean, it's so nicely planned. It's just a clean, beautiful country. I can go on and on and on. For me, just even stepping out of my door is pretty enough to appreciate Canada. As a parent, when we have children, what is the next thing to do? Take them through school, right? In Canada, your child will go through school right from preschool all the way to high school without a parent having to pay any tuition fees. I don't know where else people get that service, but it is a hefty amount of money that most parents have to pay elsewhere in the world. But guess what? In Canada, your children will go to school and get the best kind of education. You know what I mean? So I feel that if anybody might be wanting to move to Canada, education should be one of the priorities, because yeah, education is really top point in terms of the benefits of living in Canada. I'm not sure if there is any other country that provides this service, but again, this is tied to the fact that I'm a parent, and I will never forget when I had my babies. And I remember traveling back home, and I met one of my old school friends, and he asked me, is it true that in Canada, if a mom has a kid, then they will have a 12-month maternity leave? I said, yeah, oh yeah, for sure, 100%. And he was so surprised. 12 months, a whole year of maternity leave for the mother. That is the cherry on top. You can't get that anywhere else. So, as parents, you gotta appreciate that. The mother nurtures the little baby for a year, which is quite some good time enough to part with the baby, at least when the child is a year old. And also, the mother herself has healed and is ready to go back into the workforce. Having a library is so good. I love that for everybody. Libraries are open to everybody. In the libraries, you can find a lot of service, not just books. You just go to the neighborhood library. There are computers, free access, free internet. The library is always organize some information sessions for so many different stuff, group activities. Libraries are such an important thing to have in human nature, in our environments. And in Canada, there are libraries and they're free of charge. That is top notch. I'm going to say it. I love the healthcare system in Canada. I feel that is way better than where most of us come from. In Canada, you don't have to pay to see a doctor because the healthcare system is public. And when you become a resident in Canada for at least 3 months, as long as you live in Canada, it takes care of all citizens. I know there are a bit of some hiccups here and there. Sometimes it's quite frustrating, and I totally understand for sure. But by and large, knowing that when I get sick, I can get treatment and I don't have to pay up front, to me, that is really a blessing. Elsewhere in the world, not so many people get that. Even I myself, as an adult, the doctor's office calls me for whatever you're due for this test. And I'm like, oh wow, somebody's actually out there watching my health. If somebody thinks of moving to Canada, I believe these are some of the things which weigh more than the negatives. So let's talk about the disadvantages of Canada or living in Canada, especially as an immigrant. Number one, of course, I feel that this is what everybody says about Canada. It's like Canada, bad weather. It's like these two go hand in hand. Anywho, the weather. Not all the weather though. The winters in Canada are harsh. Canada has harsh winters. That is very frustrating for anybody, especially if you've never lived in winter countries. It's like the Canadian winters are super brutal because we spend most time indoors during the winter time. Life tends to be quite different and quite depressing. The weather is something to think about, especially as an immigrant. The other thing that I find frustrating in Canada is the transportation system. Canada is quite a huge country. It is the second biggest country in the world. It is a huge stretch from one city to another. You can live in Canada and have a friend or a family member who lives in a different city or province, and you could go for years without seeing each other. That is a little bit of a bias living in Canada, but also even just in the city itself, it's quite tedious using the public means. The city buses move on time and they just don't stop anywhere. A lot of times where we come from, you just step out of your door and boom, you're on the next means of transport. But in Canada, it doesn't work like that. And of course, because when you're new, you may need to depend on public means, but it tends to be a little bit frustrating. So that is something to keep in mind when you're moving in Canada. Life in Canada is expensive, but more so rent. Whether it's a single apartment unit, a double apartment unit, townhouse, a single standing home, a condominium, everywhere. Literally every city nowadays is not even just like the big cities, but even the smaller towns. Renting has become super duper expensive. And when immigrants move to Canada, that is the first shocker right there. But when it comes to rent, you need rent and you have to pay it upfront full. So it becomes quite a challenge. No wonder sometimes some people end up being homeless. But that is such a reality and such a shocker moving to Canada. If you want to do a lot of research and know which place you're going to be moving to in terms of affordability, in terms of the city and the neighborhoods you want to live in, and then try to compare the housing costs for each. You have to put all those things into play before you decide to move. Now, the other downside of immigrating to Canada is work. I don't know if I can stress this enough, but in this day and age, finding work in Canada has become quite tough thing. Literally any kind of work. Finding a job in Canada as of now, 2024, coming into 2025, it's not an easy thing. And I can't imagine somebody living their professional career. It's quite different. The good thing is that nowadays, you can look for work online, start the search before you make the move. Start looking for work even before you enter Canada. And again, that is one other frustration that a lot of immigrants go through when they move to Canada. I totally understand when I hear and see some people being frustrated moving to Canada and they realize that actually it's not what they thought or expected of it. Whereas you think that there is a lot of money in Canada, going to make so much money in this short period of time, it's the total different. It's not that. That's it for regarding what it is actually living in Canada, what's Canada like, the positives, the negatives, but also to answer some of the questions that I get. If somebody asked me, should they move or should they not move to Canada? Honestly, my honest response would be it depends on an individual by individual basis. You as a person, what are your goals? What do you know about Canada? You want to sit down and compare the two. So it's upon you and only you as a person choose if you truly want to move to Canada. And that's it that I had to share with you. I hope this video has been helpful. On that note, I will be talking to you in my next video. Bye now.